Jesus said, I am the resurrection, and I am life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Because I live, you shall live also. Friends, we are gathered here today to praise God and to witness to our faith as we celebrate the life of Jo Karpen. We come together in grief, acknowledging our human loss. May God grant us all grace, that in pain we find comfort, in sorrow, hope, and in death, resurrection. Now, growing up, the Karpens loved some gospel choir. They participated and loved it, cherished it, and made cue cards for it, which still exist. And so, to call us to worship today, I ask that the Karpen family and anybody else who knows the song can come on up and call us to worship in song.
Shall we pray? Almighty and all-powerful God, the God of Abraham and Sarah, creator of heaven and earth, we praise you. We come before you in awe and wonder, for you are great in love and power. We praise and adore you, for this is the day you have made. We shall rejoice and be glad. We cannot thank you enough for the light which wakes us up every morning of our lives. We thank you for that greater light which shines from Jesus Christ. How great you are. You are our all in all, voice of the voiceless, and shelter from the storms of life. We give you praise and thanks for all the blessings of this life. As we gather here this afternoon, we remember vividly and give thanks for Jo Karpen, who has passed away from this earthly fellowship to the fuller life of life with you. We give thanks for her life and commitment to God. We give thanks for all the lives that she touched. May Jo's soul rest in perfect peace. We will meet her again to depart no more. Bless her family and provide their needs. Help us accept our challenges with gratitude, and through your grace, help us to find that blessing become challenges, and challenges become blessings. Help each one of us to continue to show your love to our community, our city, and our world. With our gifts, that we may promote peace and goodwill towards all men. We give you praise, O God, for the love of friends and families, and the fellowship of Christ in our lives. Above all, we thank you for the hope that we have in Jesus, the joy of serving him. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
It was nearly 32 years ago that Jo sang the song, "How Can I Keep From Singing?" at our wedding. How can I keep from singing? She couldn't. And she didn't. In that spirit, and with her spirit, let us rise and share the words of Psalm 98. This is a repeat after me song. Sing to the Lord a brand new song.
Sing to the Lord a brand new song.
For God has done marvelous things.
For God has done marvelous things.
Make a joyful noise.
Make a joyful noise.
Make a joyful noise.
Make a joyful noise.
All the earth.
All the earth.
Break forth into song.
conviction of things not seen, and by faith our ancestors came to the God. And by their faith we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was made from things that are not yet visible. Our ancestors lived in faith, seeing God's promised land in the distance, and they knew that they were strangers and foreigners in this land. And by their speech and their faith, we know they were seeking another place. If they could be thinking only of that land, if they had left behind, they wouldn't have an opportunity to return. But as it is, we desire a better country, that is, the heavenly one. Therefore, because of their faith, God rejoiced in the land to call him their God. Indeed, God has prepared a city and resting place. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
I met Joe for the first time on Monday, Thursday, about 3 years ago. Now, as is our tradition at St. Paul and St. Andrew on that day, we gather here in the sanctuary around tables. We share a meal, recounting the Last Supper. So the program and the meal were underway when I saw BJ and Charlene, Harry and Jesse kind of scooch in late, as usual, and fill out a table. A woman I didn't know yet was with them. So when it was appropriate, I went over and greeted them all. I shook hands and we chatted for a bit. BJ pulled me into a hug and she said proudly, "Oh, Lee, this is my mom." Now Joe heard her and she turned around to me and she said, "Yes, I am the mom." She was so proud of that title. But I think she was prouder for the reasons that made her that role. Now, over the years, I got to know Joe better. It was this last year that I spent the most time with her. For a while, she was living in Riverdale, which is where I live. So I got to visit from week to week. But it was in our car, the drive back and forth from Riverdale to the church, that we had the most focused time to connect. Now, I loved these drives for many, many reasons. The main thing I must admit was because I got to hear all sorts of things about my boss. She loved to recount his teenage years. But as the weeks went on, her dementia worsened. And so on a drive, just one drive, she might repeat material a few times. Or maybe even several few times. Now, her most often asked question of me was, "And what do you do at the church?" Now, here I would be in my collar, and I would say, "Well, I'm an associate pastor there." She would say, "Oh," and then she would say, "My son is a pastor. No one is more surprised than I am." Now, I do count it as a gift, even of her dementia, that the things she felt to the fullest, loved the dearest, remained with her, and she dipped into those memories again and again. Now, a few days before Joe passed, a few of us friends and families were gathered around her bed. We sang, and we laughed, and we were telling stories. It dawned on me later that I was hearing some of those same stories that I had heard Joe tell. Only this time, her kids were telling it, or their friends. Those precious tales gained new life in new voices those last days of Joe's life. Now, the day after Joe transitioned, BJ, Kay, and I sat in that same space, but without her beside us in the bed. We were gathering important photos, and we were picking up her beloved stuffed animals, we were watering her plants, and we talked about her extraordinary life which we're singing today. But I learned a lot about Joe's life that I had never known before. And in the midst of all this discovery, Kay said, well, hold on. And he went into another room and he brought back this bag. And he goes, here, look, these are her sermons. I said, what? Turns out, Joe was a lay preacher. This was news to me. Of course, I knew that she was active in her home church, United Methodist Church in Massapequa. And I knew that she'd been a lay leader for years because, of course. So this idea that she had done pulpit supply, fill the pulpit whenever needed or asked, it astounded me. And I looked at this treasure trove in the back. I asked, can I borrow it? And they graciously allowed. So I have spent this last week reading page after page of her prose, line after line of her prayers. It was a tremendous blessing and an honor, because as you read through, you get a very clear picture of what Jo felt was worth proclaiming, what she knew and experienced as sacred, as holy. It was worth paying attention to. It was worth talking about. Now, her wit always accompanied her insight. On one Pentecost Sunday in 1988, in fact, it had rained so much the week before that she opened her sermon by saying, hey, it's time to build an ark. And knowing us United Methodists and our passion for committees to get things done, I expect one on hammers, boards, and another one to get us started. Then in October of 2000, she tells the story of their car breaking down on the New Jersey Turnpike. She goes to God in prayer. Please, God, send us an angel, or a cop who is an angel. In another sermon explaining how exactly we should be the salt of the earth, as Jesus instructs us to be, she makes reference to this beautiful turkey soup prepared by Kay's hands. She goes on about how many vegetables and ingredients he must have used, and also how inedible it was because he used no salt. What a shame, she writes. Her faith, come on, her faith was foremost in her work. It was rooted. It was reflected upon all things. It was front and center of her whole life, in all of the living ever days. It wasn't a thing separate, kept for Sundays or just for the church house. Jesus was real in her life, a presence, a companion, a teacher, and a savior. And she preached boldly about following the way of that Jesus. She trusted and she knew that she would meet Jesus face to face in the hereafter. She knew there was a city prepared for her beyond what she could see, beyond what she could understand or even know. And her hope, her life, was built on that unshakable faith. Now, her outlook on life and all of the living of it is captured in this bag of words of wisdom. And what was most important to her kind of keeps coming up over and over again. So it's not going to surprise you for the repeaters. Here's a list of her most often used vehicles. Number 1, the beauty and majesty of God's creation. She reveled in the gift of nature. And she reminds us, slow down, she says, and seek some degree of renewal. It is possible when we take a few moments to drink in God's handiwork. 2, music. She often writes of how music is God's gift to her life, of BJ's voice, of her playing, of Rich's compositions, of Kay's singing on Sundays. She writes, music and prayers, they're the same to me, and I thank God for allowing me to sing God's praises. 3, peace. She often stops, totally mid-sermon, mid-prayer, and asks simply and profoundly, may reason and love for each other prevail, and may the day soon come when bombs and missiles will be turned into tractors, clouds. 4, justice. She didn't let anyone off the hook in an easy faith, though she explained. Having a vision, compassion, and understanding don't do any good unless we are ready to take action. Be doers of the word, underlining doers 3 times. And finally, and the most persistent presence in all of her work, family. Not one prayer, not one sermon, not one thing exists that does not draw from her constant and deep love of her family, her husband, her kids, her grandkids. All of you pack page after page of prayer and prose. She didn't conceive of anything from the kingdom of God to salvation or to grace without experiencing it through you, her family. You were, clearly, her everything. And so we gather today with you as extended family. We are here to celebrate Jo's life, to honor her, to learn from her, and lean in on each other. So we're going to tell stories, and we're going to sing songs, and we're going to laugh, and we're going to cry. We'll probably regret, hopefully we'll release, we'll grieve, and we will praise God. This is the place and the time prepared for just that. Now I go now to Jo's own words in a prayer she offered up to God for a friend of hers who had passed away in the church. Jo prayed these words for her, and I think that we can say them now for Jo. We are saddened by our loss of our loved one, and yet we know that she is in your care as she grows from strength to strength in an unseen dimension of life. Be with her family, and we pray that they may be comforted at this time of sorrow. We thank you, O God, for our saint, Jo, who has now finished her course on our earth and is now at rest with you. Amen. Now let's stand together and sing another of Jo's favorite hymns, Leaning on the Everlasting Arms, hymn 133.
Amen.
inviting me to be here in faith with your mother. I haven't been here in a long time in worship in this place. And I'm really moved to be here and to be here at home. And I feel I'm home with you, my friend and colleague for so many years. You know, when we met, Kay and I, many years ago, and we started this journey together of our congregations intertwined, and we experienced the tremendous generosity of this community, St. Paul and St. Andrew, which opened its arms to us on a hot day like this, back in September of 1991. And we stayed here for 25 years. At the beginning of this journey, I marveled at Kay's comfort in the Jewish tradition, in many of our prayers and blessings, in our language, the Hebrew language, in many of our concepts and ideas. It was so natural for him. We went to Israel. He already had absorbed so many of the things that this place where Jews have lived for so many generations contained. And one day I met his mother, Jo, and she told me that she had sang in choirs and synagogues for many years, and that her first job was at the street, at the Nei Jeshua. So I realized not only was she part of the history of my congregation that I have the honor to lead, that has a very long history in this neighborhood, that not only she was part of that history, but that she had transmitted this admiration of the Jewish tradition and many of the blessings and customs and melodies to her children. And that in many ways, it was not by chance that we had come together, that God brought us together. It was not by chance that Kay's heart was open to this. It was not by chance that he felt at home and we felt at home in each other, and both congregations felt at home in each other. It was not by chance. I think that God made it work in such a wonderful way that your mother's legacy became that these two congregations in some way would be together, and that you would not only invite us in, but that you would honor and make this relationship grow in depth and in love and in respect. So I treasure that legacy because it made some great things happen. You know, when we Jews enter the month that precedes the high holiness of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it is a month called Elul. It's the month that anticipates the spiritual work of repentance, of soul-searching and repentance. And throughout the month, we recite, we add to our daily prayers Psalm 27, which begins, Le David, it's a Psalm of David. Adonai ori le'eshri mimira. God is my light and my strength. Whom shall I fear? And then in the Psalm, it has the verse, Ki avi ve'imi yazavuni v'Adonai yaspeni. Though my father and my mother leave me, God will take me in. And so I pray that as your mother leaves you, that God will take you in. That her legacy will be with you forever, with your family and your children, and your family's friends, and your congregation forever. God will take you in, sort of leaning on the everlasting arms, which are sang, safe and secure from all around us. May her legacy and her love live on.
A few days ago, DJ reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to say anything, or if my father wanted to say anything. my dad jumped at the chance right away, of course, because he wouldn't have to. He's unfortunately, due to some medical issues, couldn't make it. So I talked to him on the phone. I said, well, like, what do you want to say? He said, well, could you sing a song about bunny rabbits? And I said, nobody wants that. And he said, okay, well, the banjo is in the storage shed in the backyard. Would you come and sing the dummy line? And I was like, one, I can't play the banjo, and two, I don't know the words. So I said, no. He said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and email you some words that I'd like to say. So, first of all, let me thank you all for letting me share a few remarks about my Aunt Go. That's right, Jo to me will always be my Aunt Go. When I was young, I could not say the J sound, so it always sounded like a G sound. So, I love you, Aunt Go. When I was little, before Kate, BJ, Richard, Bobby, Rick, and Linda, my Aunt Go would hide peanuts all over the house for me to find. The best place to hide them seemed to be inside their turtle. I would never find them there. In fact, years later, Bob would always find peanuts in the turtle, even when he thought he had gotten them all. Jo loved to sing. When there were 3 Fleming girls would get together, within minutes you could hear beautiful 3-part harmony. One of my favorites was the 3 little maids from the school are we. Thank you for everything. I will always miss you, my Aunt Jo. Thank you.
forget the daffodils in front of Grandma's house and how much she loved to look at them. We wanted to read this poem, Daffodils by Wordsworth, for our grandma, someone who is surely dancing with the daffodils.
I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze.
Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in a never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 I saw at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance.
The waves beside the dance of the bay outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not be but gay in such a drunk company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought of what wealth the show to me had brought.
For oft, when on my couch I lie, vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. Representing myself today, but my mother, and with the help of some friends here today, my father. With that, I would first like to present my mom's contribution to the celebration of life. In telling my Aunt Charlene that my mom would not be able to make the service, I was anticipating maybe not the happiest response. The response was very reassuring. "Oh my gosh, Alex, don't worry about it, man. The way I look at it, your mom was always committed to Jo in her own way, through her letters." I remember when we were clearing out Grandma's house, we found this big box full of letters, all from your mom. She kept them all. My mom has always been diligent about keeping people up to date with our lives. No one appreciated it more than Grandma Jo. And with that, I'd like to present my mom's final letter to Grandma. "Hi, Jo. I haven't written in a while. I wanted to update you on things. Some good news here. Rich had his feeding tube removed permanently. He also does not need his daily breathing treatments anymore. He tried to downplay it like it was a little good news, but Alex and I were thrilled. And I know you are too. He has made so many big strides gradually in his healing since his stroke in August 2016. He has actually surpassed many milestones the doctors said would never happen. I really never took doctors' words as gospel truth. My mom survived cancer back when she was 50 in 1975, when doctors said it would not happen. So I am kind of skeptic when it comes to people telling me things are impossible. You would be so proud of Rich and how positive he has been. Remember when you and Bob met my parents? They loved you right away, and you all had so much to talk about. All your musical experiences for one. Rich and I sat on the couch smiling at each other, so happy you got along so beautifully. I also remember when Rich and I were newlyweds. Sometimes, Jo, you and I had some disagreements about things. I would talk to my mom about it, and I remember her advice to me so clearly. She said, "Honey, please always be nice and kind to Joe." I never forgot the loving way my mom was. She so wanted everybody in the family to get along and love and be loved. Same kind of mom as you. On that note, we went on to have little apples. I think, Joe, you and I became closer due to our mutual love of Alex. I have so many happy memories of us visiting you and Bob at your lovely home in Massapequa for so many festive occasions, and you visiting us in PA. And, of course, the fun times at Lockline Lodge. I loved sitting by the Lockline Lake, chatting with you. I remember a few years ago when we were there, watching the assortment of kids on the float, jumping off and goofing around in the water together. You said to me with a happy smile, "This is better than watching TV." Perfect description. You always made every get-together so fun. It's been pretty hot this summer. Happy for the rainy days to cool things off. I've noticed in mid-August, it is getting dark out a bit earlier already. Time really flies, doesn't it? Well, I will say goodnight for now, till we meet again. Thanks for being such a wonderful friend, mom, grandma, and mother-in-law to us. Whenever I see a picture-perfect summer day, I will think of your smile, shining on us all with love. We were so blessed to have you. Sleep tight, dear Joe. All my love. So again, I'd like to thank you all for coming to the celebration of life for this extraordinary woman's life. Yes, this extraordinary friend, daughter, sister, mother, aunt, grandma, and matriarch looking down at us right now. It means a lot to her, but it means a lot to her family who wanted to make this perfect as well. But then again, why wouldn't you? Not only do you love this woman, but Jo Karpen was an absolute delight. In the years that I was privileged enough to know her, she loved singing, riding her bike, reading the paper, and being surrounded by family. It was the way in which she did these things that made her loved. A zest for life is what my father called it, before wondering out loud why he had never inherited it. You like that one? No. Being the unit of the immediate family that lived apart from the rest, we made it a point to call Grandma as often as possible, usually every week plus holidays. Every time I would get on the phone with her, I'd say, making sure she could hear me, "Hi, Grandma, it's Alex." "Alex, how are you?" We would talk about what we've been doing, how our loved ones were doing, and any current events worth mentioning. Grandma was always an excellent phone conversationalist. She was very grateful to get a phone call, and you heard it in every word. She spoke clearly and with reciprocal volume, doing her due diligence for the person on the other line, thoughtful enough to check in on her. She'd make sure to ask not only how I was doing, but what I was doing. A favorite repeat question of mine was, "So tell me, are you working?" I had to contain my laughter when Leah brought the question up earlier. After all, a grandma needs to brag about her grandson as thoroughly as possible, so I better serve up those details. Grandma would never fail to end a call with, "Well, thank you for calling," and usually, "God bless." Yes, the phone calls were great, but nothing topped being with her in person, and her face upon meeting again. Once we visited her when I was 11 or 12, I had a growth spurt since I saw her last. She came outside to greet us and was in absolute disbelief at my height once she saw me. It was quintessential manically proud grandma. That's what it was. That was another thing about Jo. She always knew how she felt. You always knew how she felt from her face. Many of you will remember this one when she heard something that she was not so happy existed. Oh dear. She also valued education, particularly when she saw that her grandkids resembled it. I was very young, must have been 4 or 5, when we were still living in Pennsylvania, and I forget what I had to do, but my dad asked me to do something and then report back to him and Grandma, who was leaning over my dad at the computer. When I had checked on what I had to, I came back and said, "Mission accomplished." She goes, "Mission accomplished? Well, look at that! Oh my God, come here, let me get this." And then she's like, that's great that you know those words." And then she goes back to the computer, leaning on the desk. How did you learn that? Mission accomplished. And Dad's like, "Oh." My personal favorite, I cannot begin to do justice for with an imitation because it was so genuine. It would happen when she'd be listening to or watching someone she loved. It could be one of her kids talking to her in the dining room, watching her grandkids play on the float at Loch Lyon, as described by my mom, or looking around at all the family and friends at the Splashes dinner table she'd been so blessed with. What this would look like is her eyes would be focused on the marble, and her face would slowly light up and resonate at a wonderfully natural smile. Her heart happy, her soul completely content with everything that was going on. And that is how I prefer to remember my grandma. The next event will be my dad's contribution. In 1972, my father decided to compose guitar and voice parts to go with the poem Uphill by Christina Rossetti. He jotted down the words and tune on staff paper, notating the entire piece. A couple of years ago, he knew he wanted it to be performed at his mom's funeral. At the time, he thought that he'd be able to come here in person and sing and play himself. A month ago, when I asked my dad what he wanted me to say for him today, he just wanted me to find that piece. But after a long search through the boxes in the attic and crawl space, I couldn't find it. There was one box, though, that had so many music-related things from Dad's past in the 70s that I felt I easily could have missed it. I brought the box to my dad's place when Aunt BJ was there on her way up to Vermont. Another avid search turned out to be futile again. BJ asked Dad, "Can you sing well enough for me to rewrite it?" I saw some blank staff paper in the box. The next half hour was very productive at the piano, and I was happy to have made this happen after all. My father wanted so badly to be able to play and sing this in person, so we made sure to find a guitar player. So now, BJ and I will sing Richard Karpen's setting of Uphill by Christina Rossetti, accompanied by Jane Kelly Williams.
Does the road wind uphill all the way?
Yes, to the very end.
Will the day's journey take the whole long day?
From morn to night, my friend. Yes, to the very end.
Though a day's journey take the whole day,
From morn to night, my friend.
Now we're going to hear from two of Joe's kids, BJ and NK.
So, evidently no one in our family knows how to simply attend a memorial service. Even my brother Rich, unable to be here in person, made sure his voice was heard through his beautiful music. And I think I speak for my whole family when I say we're deeply touched and thankful to all of you who showed up today to speak, to grieve, to sing, to celebrate our mom. A lot of people have commented over the last couple of years what a wonderful job we all did caring for our mom. I have to say, she made it easy. If you look up the word appreciative in Wikipedia, I think there's a Google image of my mom. In fact, my dad used to say, whenever I'd ask what my mom would want for her birthday or Christmas, "Your mother is a remarkable woman. She doesn't require much. She's appreciative of everything you..." And I'd be like, "Dad, earrings or bath salts, what?" And if you saw my mom over the last year or two, you no doubt became privy to her theme song. That's the accompaniment part. She go, "Couldn't do it without you. Don't get around much anymore." Even our caregivers from other countries who had no previous knowledge of American pop music learned that song. If I could pick two of the top 10 gifts I got from my mom, it would be her love of music and her curiosity about different faiths. When I began to study Buddhism a couple of years ago, or a number of years ago, she would ask questions. She would meditate with me. We would bow to each other. She loved the little bow. Of course, when I actually took my Buddhist vow, she made sure that it did not mean that I was no longer a Christian. When we were kids, my mom always had a church singing job on Sunday morning and a temple job on Friday nights, and she welcomed us to attend both. Well, okay, church was mandatory, temple was not, but I often would accompany her to temple not just because I had a crush on the cantor, although that was a factor. Those Argentinian accents. In fact, the week my mom passed away, my friend Kelsey, who is an Orthodox Jew, happened to be in Jerusalem, and she wrote to say, "I wanted to see if there was something I could do for her here in Jerusalem. If you or she might find that meaningful, I could go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and say a short prayer, whatever brings you comfort." And I wrote back that, no, actually my mom has a deep love for the Jewish faith. So a couple of days she responded, "I said a prayer for her at the Temple Kotel on Tisha B'Av, which is the saddest day in the Jewish calendar, but I also find strangely uplifting because it gives us an excuse to feel our brokenness and then move forward." She said it was a really moving experience to be there at that time. But for my mom and me, there was something about the music at Temple that we both found haunting and lovely. The song that would always stay with me for the next week was Baruch Atah Adonai, which my mom and I referred to as the Illinois song because when I was little, I asked her why they were singing about Illinois, Baruch Atah Illinois. But I loved the song because of its haunting beauty. Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pariach amen. How'd I do? Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who brings forth the fruit of the vine. I have to say the Jews and Christians have it all over the Buddhists when it comes to music. The Buddhists are like, the primordial wisdom of the guardians of the written and dispel outer, inner, and secret obstacles. They could really use a good hymn writer. But the Buddhists have beautiful traditions largely based in silence and gentle curiosity. My mom understood the importance of silence. She would sit quietly in her breezeway every morning, praying and enjoying the birds and flowers, and she was certainly curious. Not long before she died, when she found herself sleeping a lot, she whispered to me, "I think I'm going kaput." And I said, is that what it feels like to you? She said, "I don't know, I've never done it before." That was a decidedly Buddhist-y answer. I might be dying. What's this like? My mom never thought of herself as particularly smart. I always thought she was plenty smart, but more than that, I think she was very, very wise. She had that inner wisdom that comes from spending time in silence. The inner wisdom that told her it was okay to not be so independent now, and to let herself be cared for by others. The wisdom to know when to allow herself to be held and supported, to rest in all of us. The wisdom that allowed her to trust us, not just with her life and her health, but to trust us even with her death. The wisdom and the courage to know when it was time to refuse her meds and her food. To know when it was time to let go, even though she loved us so much. The parting was excruciating. The Buddhists talk a lot about being brave and vulnerable, and my mom faced her death with both. My mom instilled in me the Christian qualities of compassion and caring for others, which she embodied so beautifully. And in the end, she offered me the beautiful example of how to allow compassion and caring from others. Still struggling a little with that, Mom, but I promise. There's a tradition in Buddhism that during the 49-day period after someone passes, to offer prayers for a safe transitioning. So if you would indulge me, I would invite you all to close your eyes and just be present with where you are right now. Just becoming aware of your body on the pew, your feet on the floor, position of your hands. Take a deep breath in. Just noticing the movement of the breath in the body, and allowing the breath to soften on the out-breath. Bringing the attention to the heart as though you are breathing in and out through the heart. And please silently contemplate these words. Jo Karpen, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be free from fear. May you be safe and protected. May you be free and awake. Please open your eyes, and if you'd like, you can put hands together at heart center. As I said earlier, no one in my family knows how to simply attend a memorial service. Least of all my mom. She would not be sitting out there. She would be up here. So, the year is 1960. The show is Kismet. The role is Marsana. My dad is on stage with her, playing the wazir. And I believe she was singing to him as he faded into the background and the lights come up on Jo Karpen. And this is my beloved.
so glad we agreed, BJ and I, to switch orders so that she didn't have to do anything right after hearing Mom sing. Very thoughtful of you. Friends, for these last 15 months of Mom's life, we moved her into an apartment in BJ's building, right over on 89th Street. Some of you have been there to visit. It was great to have her so close because it let us spend a lot more time with her. And that made up a little bit for the loss of her beloved 45 Sycamore Street in Massapequa. Whenever I came to visit her, she would always greet me in the same exact way. "Kay, what a surprise!" And at first I was a little offended. I'd say, "What do you mean? I was here yesterday, and I was here 2 days before that. What is the big surprise?" And she said, "Yes, and it's always a surprise." It took me a while, but I realized that she meant that in the very best way. Here's what she meant. She didn't expect the visit. She did not expect me to visit. She didn't take it for granted that any of us would be there for her. And whenever I came, it was a surprise, but it was a good surprise. It was a nice surprise. And that's how she was about everything. She didn't expect anything in particular, and as BJ said, she was appreciative about everything. When Charlene made food for her, when BJ took her outside and down the block to see the flowers in the garden, and did everything else in the world, when her aides would help her from place to place in the apartment, she would always say thank you for the littlest thing. Thank you. Thank you. She was so happy when we brought her up to New Hampshire with us for vacation, and she wouldn't require very much. You'll see in your bulletin, there's a picture of the views that surrounded her when she sat on the porch, which she did for hours and hours and hours, the back porch of our cabin, and she would just look at the lake and she would say, "Such beauty, such beauty." And that was all she needed. That was the way she was about life. She didn't expect a lot out of life, and she appreciated everything that life brought her, and the simplest things moved her deeply. What a surprise. What a surprise. I think that flavored her faith as well. She was never demanding of God, and she was happy to put so much into the relationship, and I think that's why she loved singing so much. She never stopped singing, never stopped singing. And I think it was just her way of saying, "God, you are so good to me, always. What a surprise. What a surprise." Reminds me of the author C.S. Lewis, who titled his autobiography, "Surprised by Joy," because that's what Mom always was, surprised by joy, full of joy and surprised by it. Mom always loved it when we sang, too. We grew up singing, as has been alluded to. We sang at school, we sang at church, we sang on the holidays, we sat around the park singing, we sang around the house. As one of my New York friends said once in visiting us, "Does everything have to be about a song for you guys?" And of course it did. As Lee mentioned in the beginning of the service, we sang in a gospel choir along with many of you and a selection of Searles, which is always what my parents refer to you as, for better or worse. And it wasn't exactly my mom's favorite brand of music. But she loved it that we loved it, and she loved that we knew those classics growing up. So much of them looking beyond what is right now to what could be. So many of them giving voice to the hope that lives in us, to the faith that stirs us, and always looking beyond this life to give a glimpse, possible glimpse of a world to come. And so we would come home singing, "I want to be ready when Jesus calls me to walk in Jerusalem just like John. We didn't know who John was, but like him. I don't know, but I've been told the streets of heaven are paved with gold. I am on my way to that New Jerusalem where the sun will never go down. Every day I'm getting preparations, packing up, getting ready to go. And her favorite, swing low, sweet cherry, coming forward to carry me home. I looked over Jordan. What did I see? A band of angels coming after me. Despite my profession, I don't know a whole lot about the afterlife. But I have this sneaking suspicion that as she was passing on, Mom looked over Jordan, and what did she see? Band of angels coming after her. And if so, I know just what she said. Angels! What a surprise! Amen. Amen. I'd like to invite some friends up to treat us all to that song in memory of Mom. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forward to carry me.
us go to God in prayer. God of us all, your love never ends. When all else fails, you still are God. We pray to you for one another in our need and for all anywhere who mourn with us this day. To those who doubt, give light. To those who are weak, strength. To all who have sinned, mercy. To all who sorrow, your peace. Keep true in us the love with which we hold one another. Amen. Into your hands, O merciful Savior, we commend your servant, Jo Karpen. She has served you and loved you well. She has loved and been loved well. Receive Jo into your arms of mercy, into the blessed rest of eternal peace, and into the glorious company of the saints of light. Let us pray. God of love, we thank you for Jo, for her life, for her legacy and her love, for all with which you have blessed us, even to this day, for the gift of joy in days of death and strength, and for the gifts of your abiding presence and promise in days of pain and grief. We praise you for home, for friends, for family, and for our baptism and place in your church, with all who have faithfully lived and died. We thank you for Jesus, who knew our griefs, who died our death, and rose for our sake, and who lives and prays with us and loves us still and always. Amen. And now I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing together that great hymn, Blessed Assurance, number 369.
and the unending, unfathomable